everyone, this is Steve Weintraub with Collider at the Collider Media Suite Media Studio here at the Kia Telluride Supper Suite in Park City. Ron Howard, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm glad you could explain where we are. This is my first time in Sundance, and it's
For real?
Yeah, it's Sundance, and it's kind of all a little bit of a blur, but it's good to see you.
Well, first of all, you're here for Rebuilding Paradise, which is a fantastic documentary.
Thank you.
Talk a little bit. I hate asking the generic question, but no one will have seen the movie yet who's watching. Talk a little bit about what it's about.
Well, on November 8th of 2018, a town in Northern California of 26,000 people, Paradise, California, a town that I knew because my mother-in-law had lived there the last 4 or 5 years of her life, and I'd visited many times. It was caught in the wake of a giant forest fire, and 95% of the town burned. As I said, this is a town of 26,000 people. It's not tiny, 95%. And, while I, as a consumer of news, like most people, look at these images of catastrophes, and I'm a little bit numb, and I feel horrible, and I hope that never happens to me, and then I go on with my day. This is Paradise, California, a place I knew. Couldn't really feel that way about it. And as our documentary division has really grown, I felt, maybe there's a story here. And it turned out to be my first vérité documentary, which is to go to Paradise and tell the story of a community in the wake of this kind of crisis. Not only the immediate wake of the crisis, but to embed and follow it for a year. And so we tell the story through the lens of a number of individuals whose personal storylines we began to follow, and who basically demonstrated to us just how complicated, just how emotionally and physically straining and dangerous at times it can be. And it was one of the really remarkable experiences of my life to be a part of it, work on it in post-production, and as well as, of course, being there.
I was going to say, one of the things, listen, it hit me hard, and I think that you mentioned the fact is there are so many, our news cycle moves so quick that, a day, if a news story stays in the news for like 2-3 days, that means it's really dire. Otherwise, it's one day and done.
Well, this was a huge story across the country, and truly devastating. And yes, there was a tremendous amount of coverage. And when I first got there and began, engaging with the story, it was still crowded with journalists and so forth. But in subsequent visits, pretty rapidly, that fell off. And I think that the residents began to understand that we were telling a different story, not just the drama of the event, but actually understanding what they were going through and wanting to share that with audiences.
I thought the opening 10 minutes is harrowing. I was nervous while watching. I felt the anxiety. So talk a little bit about putting that opening 10 minutes and why you wanted to open just right immediately into the fire.
Well, as I said, this is it's a human interest story. It's about following a lot of individuals, but in a movie, you would follow characters after understanding what it is they'd endured. Or you'd reveal it later. Excuse me. With this, we just needed to let people understand, not in a few wide shots and some news footage, but get a real intimate sense of what it was like. And because we were then going to tell, we hoped, intimate stories of people endeavoring to endure, in the wake of what winds up to be a very cruel test. So we started. Our producer, Zan Parker, went on Facebook, and she was reaching out to people, anyone willing to let us look at their cell phone footage. I had conversations with police officers and about their body cam footage. That was unbelievably emotional because this was their community as well, right? They're responding, they're doing their job, they're giving everything they have, putting their lives on the line, and yet, we have footage of an officer watching his house burn through his body cam, our dashboard cam actually, and so we wanted that kind of intimacy and intensity, and it's probably the most intense scene that I've ever been involved in, emotionally and visually.
Also, because you're watching real life. This isn't some
It's not
made-up thing.
It's not backdraft.
Yeah.
And you hear the voices of people, and it's mostly through their point of view. But again, and occasionally during the course of the film, we go back to that kind of footage to remind audiences of what these characters, what these individuals were following, went through, what they endured.
Sure. I'm fascinated by the editing process because that is the final rewrite. Did you ever have a cut that was way longer?
Oh yeah. But by the way, in Verite Docs, it's not it's not the final rewrite. I mean, eventually it's the final rewrite, but it's also the first draft because you can't script this. You do research. You learn as you go, but it's really the people that you're interviewing and what you're observing and what you can get on camera that's the story. That's the script. Very unnerving for a guy like me who spent an entire lifetime, carefully trying to advance and understand, the screenplays to build these moments. And here, it's all about trusting. Just this process of discovery. It's very different. When you get to the editing room, it's similar because now you have what you have, this raw material that you've gathered, and now you've got to tell the story in a cinematic way, a way that conveys the ideas for audiences in an engrossing, a compelling way, and in this case, in a way that also, I hope, stimulates empathy on a deep level.
No, 100%. Did you have a storyline or something that came close to being in the film that you ended up removing for some reason? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, there were a number of individuals who we followed. We cast the net very wide.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. And then slowly but surely, as the months went on, we began to understand, who we might focus on more, and narrowed that. And it was interesting. I think what's very organically happened is we were following the people who were really, really showing up, the ones who were engaging. I mean, many people were devastated, but they vanished. They were not there to fight for rebuilding paradise. So the individuals that we kept revisiting and who very, I think, courageously and graciously allowed us into their lives, witnessing a lot of very difficult and upsetting moments, along with some moments of real achievement and growth. But the lesson that I learned was that, that engagement is like one of the great foundations for healing, and certainly for growth in a community. Because the people who were going to Gold Nugget Days, that's the parade that they would have every year, they wanted to put Gold Nugget Days up, and they did it. It was a shadow of what it had been, but they were there. Christmas tree lighting, town council meetings, memorials, these things matter. And if there's a lesson in it, just as a citizen, it's pay attention to your community. Your community is not something to be taken for granted. It's something to be nurtured.
100%. There's no way of getting around the fact that climate change is a huge. I mean, there's nothing I say right now there's not enough I can say. I mean, climate change is a huge problem around the world. I look at the Australian fires, and it's all interconnected.
Scientists tell us it is, and I believe them. So do the firefighters that we interview who were fighting the fires. They're confronted with this. It's not like the town of Paradise had never had a fire before. They had. It's not like the town of Paradise didn't anticipate that a really bad fire could come through someday and cause a lot of problems. They did. They had strategies. They had plans in place, but they were just overwhelmed because none of it was adequate. None of it could anticipate the intensity of this particular fire. But it's not an outlier. We're seeing it over and over and over. And if there is a message, I suppose this is a new normal, and we have to understand what it means to go through it. And by understanding that, perhaps you can anticipate, perhaps you can prepare on a governmental level and on a human personal level.
Before I run out of time with you, I definitely have to ask you a few other things. I thought your daughter did such an amazing job on The Mandalorian.
Oh, I'll pass that along.
Right, and so
I do too. Strange as it might seem,
right.
Dad's proud.
Right. I have to ask you, did she show it to you early, or did you watch it when it first aired?
Well, I can now admit that it's aired, that yes, I did. I did get to see it early, and I even got to throw in a couple of comments. Most ignored. You know,
Right.
she is my daughter.
Right.
You know, why would she listen to anything I say? But I thought she did a great job with the episode, and learned so much, and you know, kind of under the tutelage of Jon Favreau, who's got you know, doing great work on that show and is incredibly passionate about it. And the show's a big success, so Bryce is thrilled about that. She also has a documentary called Dads. Were you in Toronto? Did you see it?
I spoke to her, actually.
Oh, great. Very, very proud of that. That comes out around Father's Day. And so she's loved that. Now she's getting ready for Jurassic World. That's her year this year.
I have to ask you, you obviously are a huge Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
Do you have any thought about wanting to do an episode of Mandalorian yourself? Or is it something, have you said to John, hey, you know, this is kind of good?
Yeah, it is good, by the way. It is really good. You know what? Even the Solo situation, as much as I do love Star Wars and all things galaxy, Imagine is so dynamic, and there's so much going on with Imagine Entertainment and so many creative opportunities that I don't really have the time, as much fun as it would be to do something like that. Now, we are developing Willow for Disney Plus.
Oh, sir, that was another question coming.
And I don't know about directing or not, but John Kasdan is writing. He's very passionate about it. He's doing a great job. We don't have a green light yet, but if it goes, I'll certainly want to roll up my sleeves and be a part of that, because that would be great to revisit that world.
If you don't mind me asking, with something like when you're developing a project like a Willow for Disney Plus, do they give you the idea of, hey, we want to do 6 or 8 episodes, or we want to do 2-hour movies? Like, do they give you that sort of outlining thing, or are you sort of on your end thinking, how do we want to do it, and then presenting it to the studio?
What they tend to do is look to the showrunner. In this case, that's John Kasdan. Say, how many hours are you thinking? And if that's in alignment with their thinking, fine. If not, it's a conversation. But they in this. In this world of these event series, they really do look to the showrunners and the key creatives to tell them their vision. These things, and it's one of the reasons why TV has gotten so good, is that they really are looking at the showrunners as authors of something that they're deeply passionate about. And John is deeply passionate about Willow, which tickles me no end.
My last thing on Willow, is it like after where the movie took place? Do you have a timeline?
He would shoot me. But no, Warwick Davis is going to be in it, and so yes, I think it's safe to say it's decades later.
If you could add one category to the Oscars, what would you add?
Oh, I really like. I like what the Grammys do. I like what the Critics' Choice does. I like categories. I honestly wish the Academy did, a sort of adventure sci-fi, or sci-fi horror. I wish they did a comedy category.
Oh yeah.
And then I wish the big playoff was Best Picture, so that Best Picture could be a documentary, it could be an animated, it could be. So I wish they were all. You had 5 or 6 genre categories, and then sort of the grand Oscar.
It's interesting you say that, because like a comedy will never get to Best Picture. It's just never going to happen. And I don't. Maybe certain people just don't realize how difficult it is to make a comedy.
That is a high wire act of all high wire acts. But by the way, I say what you want to say about superhero movies and so forth. Those are incredibly difficult movies to make and require masterful direction. It takes years of planning and thought. Some of them are more formulaic than others. But when somebody makes an original and expresses themselves through that genre, that's as legitimate as anything.
I could not agree more. Are you thinking about a comic book movie in the future?
I don't have one, because I wasn't a comic book reader when I was a kid. So no, there's not one that I have. I have a lot of projects that I'm very interested in, and I did love given the circumstances of the way I wound up being involved in Solo, I had a blast making that movie, and it did remind me that I really enjoy that kind of playful storytelling and the action and I love tech. I love actors more, but it's great what you can offer audiences.
I'll say it on camera, and I thought you did a great job with Solo.
Thank you.
The thing that I have found over the last few years is that, and it wasn't this way when I was younger, but there is a toxicity in fandom where people are like, it's really bad.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, like, you obviously took on Star Wars. There are so many people that love it, and you're always going to have people that say, "Oh no, that's not for me."
Right.
Did that sort of turn you off to that kind of a movie, or did you sort of say, "Well, this happens on every movie"?
Well, it doesn't happen on every movie with that kind of intensity, but it sort of goes with the territory when you have really high level intellectual property. There's a bit of that when I did The Grinch 20 years ago. But George Lucas is a mentor, a tremendous friend. He warned me, and he's always said, "Hey, look, it's for the fans," and yet you have to have the courage to hear them, but tell the story you want to tell, and so he's all for the galaxy expanding and experimenting. That's what he prefers the most. He gets most excited about those that want to push the boundaries of what a Star Wars movie or TV show. And he'd always contemplated TV shows. Of course, he did the animated and so forth. I think I was sort of prepared for it.
Are there still a lot of deleted scenes from that movie that have never been seen?
I don't think so. I think they pretty much made it onto the extras because it was, given the circumstances with Phil and Chris leaving the movie and me coming in, it was at a point where, it was almost a rewrite and a continuation, and then there's a certain percentage of the film that hadn't been shot at all yet. So no, I think we were pretty targeted as to what we were making, and so there's half scenes and things like that. But you can find those.
Sure. If I'm not mistaken, and I make mistakes all the time, you have a movie coming out later this year?
Hillbilly Elegy for Netflix.
Exactly.
Which will also have a theatrical run as well. We don't have a date yet, but
for people that aren't familiar with it, can you say what it's about?
It's a memoir written by J.D. Vance. It was a bestseller for nearly 2 years, and it's about a guy from the Rust Belt, Ohio, whose family came from Appalachia, Jackson, Kentucky, and it's the sort of the collision between his chaotic childhood and sort of the way in which that informed his life and his thinking, and his potential, which was ultimately he graduated from Yale Law School before he wrote this book, and he's gone on to do other things. And so it's really it's a story of transformation. And while it focuses on that culture, a group of people that I really, really relate to, given my own family background and history and my wife's as well, it really is about being your best self, finding strength in your heritage and the lessons that you learn, but also recognizing the hurdles that some of that might represent as well, and learning how to grow beyond it. So it's this, it's a self-actualization story. It's powerful. Glenn Close is stunning.
Your cast is ridiculous.
Amy Adams just kills it, and then we have newcomers playing both a younger and an older J.D. Vance, who did a great job as well. Haley Bennett's in it; she's terrific. It was just a really great performance opportunity. Probably the best one that I've had in that regard since maybe Frost Nixon or Beautiful Mind.
Do you know are you guys aiming for maybe like the Toronto Film Festival with it?
I don't know. I really don't know Netflix's marketing plans, because we finished shooting, editing now. As I've been doing Rebuilding Paradise, I've been sort of dividing my time between the Hillbilly Elegy editing rooms. Got a few pickups to do, and then we'll see what they do with it.
Do you know what your next film is going to be?
After that, I don't. No, I've got a number of things that I'm really working on. Films, TV series where I'd like to do the pilot, or an event series where I'd like to do the first couple of hours that Lance Black is writing. That's Under the Banner of Heaven, based on a John Krakauer book. Really hope we get to do that. I don't know what's going to fall into place. So much going on with Imagine. I have another documentary that I'd like to do, and Brian Grazer and I are just having a blast with all these projects. We have a kids and family division at Imagine now, and they're doing great stuff, and including working on Tiny Chef project. Do you know Tiny Chef?
I don't, but it already sounds great.
Tiny Chef is fantastic. It's a creatively very rich time at Imagine, and I'm really enjoying it.
Well, the thing that I found, and I know we got to wrap up, is that this is an interesting time over these next few years with all of these streaming services all looking for content. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like Imagine's in a perfect place in terms of having the ability to push out content to all the different places.
Well, we're able to extend to some great collaborators now, artists. Some of what Imagine offers Brian and I in terms of that sort of creative freedom and that possibility, and just finding the story and then the perfect home for it. That Nat Geo on Rebuilding Paradise and many other projects that we've done. We're doing another season of Genius about Aretha Franklin. And these are bold, interesting projects, and Nat Geo is the perfect home for them. But we have projects all over Disney Plus and Hulu and CBS All Access, and it's really fun to find Paramount Network. 68 Whiskey is a new show of ours, and it's really and again, a great fit for that network. So you get Roberto Benabib, who's a terrific showrunner, very passionate about this show, and we found exactly the right home for it.
Two last things for you. One, you have an amazing resume. Which do you think of your previous films is going to be the first to be rebooted?
Well, we're talking about a splash with a merman, but I don't know if it's really going to happen. That's pretty experimental. But Channing Tatum is the one that wants to be the merman, so that's kind of it would be fun if that ever came together. The first to be rebooted, well, of course, we have rebooted Friday Night Lights, and we're on the brink of doing a movie again. So we did a movie, then it was a show, TV series, excellent series.
It's one of my all-time favorites.
Very passionate about a script that we have now for a feature film version, different set of characters, different part of the country.
Do you have a director?
I can't announce, but yes, all going well and very, very positive there.
Do you think it could be shooting this year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And Parenthood was a movie, then it became two series, actually. One failed, the other one succeeded. And there's talk of Parenthood again as possibly a movie or possibly a Broadway musical. And so, we're looking back at a lot of our projects.
My last thing for you, Bryce shared a great story about wanting to shadow you on the set of Solo,
right,
to watch and learn, and she said she basically had to fight because you were a little uncomfortable with that. And so talk a little, my last thing, and I know we got to go, but what was that like, having her shadow?
She's not really a daughter. She's a movie star, and so with a young cast feeling a lot of pressure on Solo, I wasn't necessarily sure how comfortable everyone would have with Bryce around, but she convinced me to try it for a day or two, and of course everybody fell in love with her because she's that kind of person, and it was great having her around, and she had a couple of pretty good suggestions. Oh yes.
Got it. And did you use those suggestions?
I did.
Oh,
unlike.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Well, listen. I want to say again how great of a job you do with Rebuilding Paradise.
Thank you.
When is it? When can people see it?
We're looking at a theatrical window, spring or summer, and then fall on Nat Geo.
Got it. Listen, I hope everyone tunes in and sees it. Thank you so much for visiting us. Thank you to Kia, and thank you to everyone in Park City.
Fun to see you again.